Shalom Talmudim. We're going to have a brief review lesson over the things that we've already talked about, but these three items are literally the most important things that you could be dealing with. So that's why we need to pay special attention to them. So we're going to be talking about nouns, constructs, state, pronominal suffixes, and verbs. So first of all, you're familiar with, hopefully by now, the main endings for nouns. Flipping it over to Hebrew here. So if you have just the normal noun, all right, I need to make it all Times New Roman because otherwise it just looks despicable. Okay, so Times New Roman. So if you have just a normal word like Seuss, you know what, I'm going to make this also bigger so that everyone can see it easier. Okay, so we're dealing with Seuss right now. So Seuss is a singular masculine word, and then so if you wanted to refer to one horse, you'd say Seuss. And I should say that if you wanted to refer to a particular Seuss, you would say Ha Seuss. So this is how it would look if you saw it with the article Ha Seuss. Now, I'm trying to do my best to use the printed text because just to make it more consistent for everyone. So that you can benefit from looking at it. If it does work, yay. If it doesn't, oh well. So you have Seuss. If you wanted to view the plural ending for masculine is im, with a final mem, not a regular mem, but a final mem. So Susim. Now, so if you're referring to a plural, if you were going to refer to a dual, you would use the ending Susaim. Susaim. So Seuss, Susaim for two, and Susim. Okay, this is all review so far. And then if we have the word for cow, para, normally a feminine word is going to end with a kametz he or a tav. Sometimes a word will end with a tav to communicate it's in the feminine as well. Not always, but that's the general rule. And so here you have para, meaning cow. Par is bull or male bovine, if you want to say it that way. So how would we make this into plural? We would say I need to make it parot. How do I parot? There we go. It should encourage you, hopefully, that sometimes I still can't remember how to type the right letter. All right, so parot. By the way, if you're interested, I don't know if I said this in class, but I do have a YouTube video on how to install Unicode keyboards for Hebrew and Greek on YouTube, so you can look and see how to do that through Logos. So parot would be how you parot. Feminine plural. The ot ending is how you do that. All right, so that's review on how to do nouns. You have Seuss, Susim, para, parot. Okay, now that same idea is adjusted a little bit when you're dealing with construct, state, and pronominal suffixes. This is a unique category which we've talked about. A pronominal suffix is one of the things that is added on to the end of the word. So, for example, if you have Susi, Susi means my horse. If you have Susai, that means my horse says, it's plural. Now, if you have susek, say susek, that would be your horse, feminine singular. If you have suseka, you would have your horse, masculine singular. So there's differentiation here, and we've been practicing that just so you remember. Now, the thing about what happens when you get into the plural of a noun, this is just review again, but it's worth practicing, is you basically take the plural ending, so susim, and that becomes a a transition to the construct. So instead, susim becomes, you drop the M and you lengthen the vowel, so it's suseka, suseka, or susek. So you drop that and it lengthens. Now that's how you add the pronominal suffix. If it's in construct, you obviously don't have the pronominal suffix, but you can have the word following, and that can help you understand what's going on. So for example, Susei Haish would be horses of the man. Susei Haish, horses of the man. Now typically, words will either keep relatively the same form, and you just tell by context that they are in construct. But if they're in the plural for masculine, they'll drop off the mem. If they're in the plural in the feminine, like if you were going to say cows of the man, you would say, oops, here we go. You'd say, whoa, wrong finger position there. Parot haish. So parot haish. Notice it's the same form. And sometimes, this isn't the same across the board, but sometimes the first vowel will soften just a little bit. So parot haish, parot haish. Sometimes that'll happen, but either way, it's essentially the same pronunciation. And so you're going to have that equivalence there in the feminine plural. So there are a few words that are unique. The monosyllabic words that we talked about, av, the word for father, it becomes avi in the construct or in the pronominal suffix. So if you're adding a pronominal suffix, avik, or if it was just father of the man, it would be avi haish. So there are a few exceptions like that. We'll learn those with the words as we go, but typically that's going to be the main pattern to understand. Is masculine plural is the one you have to watch out for. That will drop off the mem and work in construct. And if you have the monosyllabic av, ach, those words add the heroic yod in between. We did do a lecture on construct state that you can go back and watch. Otherwise, if you have specific questions in class, let's talk about those, because those are important to understand. All right, so by way of review for verbs then, what we just introduced this last time is, normally I've been giving you all these forms of the verb. Here's the full forms. In the first couple verbs, I haven't given you the feminine form because that's not as common. But since we do have a plurality of females in our class, it is important to know the feminine plural form. So it follows the same pattern and just uses the same noun endings. So omedot would be how you would refer to feminine plural. Omedim, omed would be masculine singular. Omedet would be the feminine singular. Another form in feminine singular, instead of the edit ending, would be laka or aka. So holek becomes holaka. And so again, just solidifying the kametz he ending or the segol tav ending. Those are normally the markers of the feminine. So these are participles. We've been only teaching participles essentially in utilizing. So if you wanted to say he is walking to the house, you'd say hu holek el habayit. So you could say something like that. If you wanted to say he is sitting, you'd say hu yoshev. If you want to say she is sitting, you'd say he yoshevet. Those kind of things. If you want to say they, hem yoshevim. Okay, so we understand that. But the thing to remember is that there are other ways to use verbs. So what we started to introduce last time is this idea where in the future, the verbs that I am going to introduce are going to be done they're going to be given without vowel pointings, and they're just going to be given like this. Now, you might say, well, why? That seems so difficult. Well, the reason is because we're going to start paying attention to the fact that you can construct your own verbs, and that's just following the same patterns. So this word here, which the default, which I've told you, is that when you see a verb, you just memorize it with A sounds underneath it now. So this would be pronounced amar. This one down here would be pronounced shamar. Shamar. So now when you think about that, okay, how would I say, and amar means to speak or to say, and shamar means to guard or to keep. So how would I say I am saying to the man? Well, I would say ani omer. So you can actually, construct your own verb. Ani omer el ha'ish. Ani omer el ha'ish. And then how would I construct the feminine? Well, I would say follow the same pattern as halak or as yoshevet. So it would either be o meret or it would be o mara. You see, so if I do it like this, it could be, and in this case, it's o mara is the more common, but it actually shows up, or it could show up in both instances. But omara is actually more common. Omara. So you could say, he omara el ha'ish. She was saying or is saying to the man. So that's the key, is you're following the same patterns that you know, and that you're going to follow that same pattern. That's why when I give you this verb, I'm just going to give it to you, and you would just pronounce it as shamar. That's how you pronounce it. That's how you memorize it. The same could apply to the previous verbs that we've known, by the way. But if you understand how it's functioning, you can memorize it as specific vocabulary words, or you can just memorize it with the special vowels, just the AA, the A-class vowels underneath. That's typically how people will do it. Now, we've also learned a couple imperatives. This is an example of imperative. So the imperative typically has a short vowel up front. Notice how underneath the sheen here you have a shava, and underneath the sheen on either side you have a hirik. That's because shortened, an imperative is short and quick, because you have to yell at people. No, I'm just kidding. But that's a good way to remember it, is that you have the short up front. So shema, listen, shema, and then shimu, shimi. Those ideas are the quick imperatival forms nuances. So now if you wanted to make, there's two ways that the imperative can form. Either it's going to be short to A, shema, or it's going to be short to O class, shemo. Now the rule, which I'll tell you now, but you don't need to remember it, we can just learn it for each word, is that if the word ends with a guttural, it's going to take a class. So this is a guttural. The gutturals are aleph, ayin, hey, het, resh. There's 5 of them. So, and we'll go over that more, but this is just introductory. So shema is how you would form the imperative. So how would we form, and I should say resh is like a pseudo guttural, because it actually doesn't take the exceptional imperative form. So for example, for shamar, how would we form that imperative if you wanted to say guard your heart? We don't know the word for heart, but lave is the word for heart. So you would say shamor. Shamor is the word for guard. So shamor would be creating the imperative. Like you say shamor. So we're going to start using more imperatives. And so this is just the rule. I'll teach you the forms, of course, but the rule is you just do the short to O class or short to A class, depending on what the word is. So you could say shamor levcha. Levcha would be your heart. Shamor levcha, guard your heart. Or you could say something like, for amar, you could say amor, amor, like speak. It sounds like you're saying love in another language, but it's not. It's speaking in Hebrew. So if you wanted to say to somebody stand, you could follow the same pattern up here for amad. Omed would be ani omed, I am standing. But if you wanted to say to tell a man to stand, you would say amod, amod. And then if you wanted to say to a feminine, to a woman to stand, you would say amadi, amadi, following this pattern here with the hirik yod at the end. So it starts to make sense after you get used to it. We'll practice it in conversations in class, but I just wanted to let you know how verbs are working, and we're going to start adding more verbs in so we can actually have some conversations, and we'll see how that goes. So I hope you guys have a good weekend.